Shark here. So we're ready to install the actual door. Now this is the top rail to install the two sliding doors on. It's going to sit up right tight to there. Now, once I have that in, you can imagine trying to cut in and paint tight to that without getting paint all over the steel rail. It will be pretty challenging. So it's always the best bet to make sure I get my 2 to 3 coats of semi-gloss or whatever kind of paint you're going to use onto this door frame and trim before you start. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get 3 full coats here and at least 2 on the sides, anywhere where that might be. That way I'll be definitely happy with that. The paint that I'm using was a little old, so I'll show you here. What I did is I put a piece of screen inside another container and I transferred it, so that way it kind of filtered out some of the clumps that had accumulated inside that paint. That's a good thing to do, just to save you throwing out a gallon or 2 of paint when you can totally repurpose it and use it that way and make it usable. So that's what I did. So with my paint in hand, I want to make sure I use a quality brush. If you get a dollar store brush or something that's really cheap, you get what you pay for. If you buy a brush, this one's probably $14, $15. The bristles seem to stay stiff for a longer time, and you'll have a lot less difficulty cutting in and making a nice, tight, clean lines. If you're not as good of a painter, you might want to put tape along here and then paint, and the tape will protect it. I generally don't do that because over the years I got pretty good at cutting in. For right now though, I'm planning on coming back in with the gray paint later. So if I roll around this edge and I get a little bit extra paint covering on this gray area here, I'm not going to worry too much about it because I will come in and it'll be easy for me to take that gray and cut in really close to there later. And have a nice clean line. And that'll also allow me to cover this silicone that we did in the previous video completely with paint, and then come back in later and cut in with the gray. You can see I just cut in there. On your first pass, you might find it doesn't really want to grab too well. Might feel like the paint isn't really sticking. It's usually the case when you're going over the primer for the first time. Don't worry about it too much. Just get a thin coat on, let it dry up, come back in an hour or 2, depending on how fast the drying time is, and get another one on there. Cutting in definitely is a skill. You get better at it with practice. This brush isn't working too nicely for me at the moment. I'm going to cover it a little bit more in paint just to get it so the bristles will stick together better. And see how I just paint with half the brush goes into the corner, right to the edge. Just go on by. So that's what you want to do. Okay, so I got 3 coats of paint on here. I ended up doing 4 coats on the top side and just a little bit down these sides here, just to make sure that I've got really good paint coverage on there before I install the top channel. One thing that did happen, I noticed while I was painting it, I actually noticed that this top right corner here, I missed 2 little holes. So I went and filled those in and then painted again to cover those up. So I didn't worry too much about it. I can use another coat of paint on here. But to be honest with you, I still have lots of other painting to do. I'll be breaking out my paintbrush again to do the crown mold. I'll be doing the trim down the stairs, some baseboards and stuff. So I'll be breaking out the paintbrush again to hit all that stuff. So I'll just touch this up again if I need at that point. I'm in a little bit of a time constraint to get this door in right now. So the door I'm installing in here is actually the door I took from upstairs. So what I wanted a set of mirror doors upstairs. So I purchased a mirror door, installed that upstairs in my house, and then I took the hardware from the door and I brought it down here. So The two panels that I'll be installing in this are actually from the upstairs closet from when I originally purchased my house. So what I did is I went upstairs and I just checked the distance from the jamb to the edge of this where it's actually installed, okay? And that's what I'll be setting it at right here. So when I measured this side upstairs, I had 1 3/16. And then when I checked the side on the left side of the upstairs door, it was actually at 1 inch. So I'm going to split the difference a little bit there, and I'll just go with 1 1/8. So that's what I want to set this at, 1 1/8 of an inch. Okay, and if you look right here, there's a bit of a gap. I can move it tight, or I can move it back there. So that's the maximum distance here. So what I can check is, I can see what that is. It's a 1/4 of an inch. And we actually made this frame 1/4 of an inch bigger than we wanted, just so we had that space. So what I'll do is I'll shift that over to set it at 1/8. That way I'm splitting the difference between both sides of the door. So I should have the same gap here as I do on the other side. So I've set this side at 1 1/8 inch, and I've also set the left side as well at 1 1/8 inch, and I've set this gap right here 1/8 of an inch away from the jamb on both sides. So that's exactly where I need to sit this. Now I just need to get a marker. All right, with it set in place, I'll take a Sharpie and I'll just tap, make a little mark down inside there. Try not to get too much on my white part of my railing here, just so I can see those little dots there. There's 4 on the bottom of this railing. The hardware that comes with it for installation are wood screws. Shorter one and long one. This is about 1.5 inches and maybe a 3/4 inch one. I haven't measured them, but pretty close. So these are really good if you're installing into wood. The top I will be installing into wood, so I'll use these for the top, the 1.5 inches. And then the bottom ones wouldn't really work for me because I'm going down into this vinyl flooring right here, like a vinyl product. And then below that is concrete. So I have a few options. One is to drill it out and then use a concrete screw, which I could do. I'm going to skip that route because this is a floating floor, which means it's not really attached to anything, and you're supposed to keep a gap for vinyl flooring, and then also for laminate flooring, you're supposed to keep a gap all the way around the perimeter so it doesn't touch anything. So I really feel comfortable putting a screw through this because it effectively connects the flooring to the subfloor, in this case the concrete. So if there's any shifting in this floor, then these pieces right here wouldn't be able to move, and it might separate these gaps, okay? So this is my first experience with this type of flooring, so I don't want to have a problem with that. If you don't have the option of screwing this down, then what you can do is you can use an adhesive, you could use silicone or some type of glue to glue the channel down to the floor. In my case, I don't have either of those, so I'm going to try to use actually is this Gorilla Tape. I used it actually on my mirror of all things. I was backing out of my driveway with my wife's SUV and I ripped the mirror off. And I looked into the price for the part inside to replace it, and it was just a plastic piece, but they don't sell it. The manufacturer only sells the whole mirror, and it was like $700 mirror. So I thought, if I lose the mirror or it falls off, this is like $15. So I thought I'd try it, and lo and behold, the mirror's held on for about 6 months to a year, somewhere in there now at this point. So it's holding up pretty well. So I'm going to try this. I'm going to cut this and attach it to the bottom of this and stick it down, and I'm pretty confident now that it'll hold down pretty strong for a long time. So I'm going to do that. So I had contemplated running it down the middle of the track, but I was actually thinking that it might get tippy if I do that. So I'm going to put a couple pieces on either side of each hole that run perpendicular to the length of it. I'll stick them on. Now I'm just going to run a few pieces right in the middle between these 2 or 4 sets that I have. Okay. Okay, with those, okay, you can see I can put some perpendicular and then some that run the length of it right down parallel to the edge. With those on, I'm going to test fit it just to make sure it lines up with my holes still. With the Sharpie marks that I put down. Okay. Right. So I'll peel off the adhesive backing. Can be a challenge. Stuff really holds. Okay, finally I got all that stuff peeled off. That took way too long. But anyways, you can see it's all running down the length out there. And now I just want to carefully line it up, holding it, just hover it over top of the hole on the right side first. If I can find it. Okay. And put my finger on this edge and I'll line up the other holes. Slowly. Okay, that lined up, that lined up. Now I'll just push down on this stuff. That stuff grabs really well. Okay. And that should do it for the base. I know it's not the ideal way with proper fasteners, but I'm pretty confident that will not move anywhere anytime soon. You can see I can't even move that. Putting all my effort on it. A lot of weight on that. I can't move that. It's not going anywhere. With my bottom confidently in place, I'm going to have a test fit of the top. So my paint's still pretty fresh. I want to be careful. The ends of this steel are pretty sharp and they will scratch that paint easily enough. So just like the bottom, I end up with 1/4 of an inch on the end here. Okay, so I want to split that difference. So I want to shift it down 1/8 of an inch. Okay, setting that. Now, when I went and checked my measurement upstairs, I noticed that the top rail was sitting just in flush with the jamb right here. So I want to do the same thing. What I'll do here is, I actually have, I'll show you, there's 5 holes in this. So there's 1 hole actually right in the center. So they sent 4 screws, 4 long screws, and 4 short screws, but there's 5 holes on the top of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use one of the short screws from the bottom that I didn't need anyway. And I'm going to set that in the middle and get the top screwed in just on the middle, and then I'll set the left and right. So first thing to do is get this up in here, set my gap left and right first. Okay. That looks good. Now I'll move it in to where I need it so it sits properly flush with the jamb on each side. Once I'm happy with that, I'll mark it here. Okay. Put it gently. I'm going to use this impact driver to install it. Now, the difference between an impact driver and a drill is, drill is more for drilling holes, and an impact driver is specifically designed to put screws in easily. So it makes a ratcheting sound, almost like your ABS in your car. It delivers the torque in increments instead of all at once, and that prevents you from stripping out the bit. Okay, so I take this, okay, with my screw set on the tip of my screwdriver, and I'm using a Robertson, which makes it easier for this. If you use the Phillips, because it takes either one. If you use Phillips, you might find the screw will fall off easier. So go with the Robertson bit for that purpose, and many other purposes, but that's a good one. I'm setting it up, I'm lining it up with my hole. Go up in here and put it in forward to start. Okay, I just hit it, got 1 screw. So now that that's good, I'll check this side and this side and make them equal. Make sure that I'm actually going to do this by eye. I'm not going to measure, I'm just going to feel it, put my hands right here, and that's pretty good right there. I'm happy with that. Okay, so I'll grab the other screws and put them in. installed. Now I can take the two panels and install them. What I want to do is I want to tilt it and put the wheels to the backside channel. There's two channels. So I want to put it to the backside channel first. And those wheels will just hook on up in there. Double check that it's in there properly and sliding. Yep, seems okay. Okay, that's the first panel. Now I can take the second panel. This one's a little trickier because this here will prevent you from tipping it out as easily. So, that effort. There we go, I had to put a little bit of pressure on it to move that in. So, let's check it and see if it's rolling nicely. Okay. Now that it's installed, there's actually a very noticeable gap right here. It's tight at the bottom. So as you can see down here, it's actually tight here, but the top has this gap here. So in order to get rid of that, there's little set screws on the inside that hold the door and allow you to adjust it. So what I can do is this corner here, if I loosen the screw on the inside, it'll drop this corner down, effectively moving this closer to this doorway. So, or to this side of the jamb. So that's what I want to do there, and I can also check the other side as well. It's pretty far out. I'll adjust those and set it to level. So I managed to get both sides sitting nice and level. This door sits nice and level up and down with this side of the jamb, and as well as the other side. So the next thing you might want to check, once you have them both level, is just to check your heights of your doors. See if your gap here is a little bit too big. You just want to check your gap right along the bottom and see if you want it to get a little bit smaller or if it's running a little too tight down to the steel. So what you can do then is you can just adjust both of those set screws on each door equally. That'll either raise it up or raise it down without throwing it out of parallel. The other thing to check is to go along and see if both of these doors are the same height. So you'd want both doors riding at the same height to make it look nicer. Both of my doors are sitting properly already, so I don't actually have that problem to deal with. We're actually pretty good right now. So with both doors sitting level and true the way I like them, the only thing left to do is grab inside here, there's a little plastic clip. And what you have to do is just put your thumb on top and slide it to click it down into the channel down here. Well, that took a lot more effort than I anticipated to push those clips in. I actually ended up taking the screwdriver, just a standard flat screwdriver, and I put it on top of the plastic clip and pushed down with a little bit more force. I couldn't get it by hand, so that actually seemed to work. I didn't break anything, so that's good. The only other thing you might want to address, this one already has them, but just up in the top left and right corners of both of these panels, there's a little rubber stopper that'll keep it from making a slamming sound when you shut the door hard, and just keep it from impacting and scratching up the inside of the jamb. So that's always a good thing to put on there. And with that, that's it. We went from rough opening, framed it out, trimmed it out, cased it out, and then installed the door. That's this series, and hope to see you on the next one.